My name is Claire Morrison and I am 35 years old, and the morning I woke up to 99 missed calls from the same people who told me to never contact them again was the morning I finally understood what my father had been trying to tell me all along. Let me say that again so it really lands. 99 missed calls. From my mother. From my younger sister Natalie. From numbers I did not recognize, probably borrowed phones because they had figured out I had blocked them. 99 calls in a single night from the women who had sent me a message on my birthday, on my actual birthday, telling me they needed space from me and to please stop reaching out. My sister had liked that message. She had pressed the little heart reaction on the text where my mother told me to disappear from their lives. On my birthday. What they did not know, what they had never bothered to understand even though they had been living off of it for over a decade, was that every dollar that flowed into their lives, every mortgage payment on the house they called home, every lease on every car in their driveway, every credit card swipe at every restaurant and spa and boutique, all of it moved through my hands. My signature, my accounts, my authorization, and I had made it stop. Before I tell you what happened in those hours between the birthday text and the 99 missed calls, I want to take you back to the beginning. Because none of what happened on that birthday makes sense unless you understand what came before it. You need to understand who I was before I understood who I was. I grew up in a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. We were not rich, not poor, somewhere in the middle where things were always almost fine but never quite comfortable. My father, Daniel Morrison, ran a small commercial real estate firm he had built himself from absolutely nothing. He had started it in his late 20s with a single property management contract and a second-hand desk in a rented office space. By the time I was born, he had built it into something real. Not an empire, but something steady and honest, and his. My mother, Patricia, was beautiful in the way that takes up all the air in a room. She had grown up being told she was special, and she believed it with every cell in her body. She was not unkind exactly. She was simply someone who organized the world around what she needed from it, and what she needed was to be admired and to have a daughter who reflected that admiration back at her. That daughter was not me. My sister Natalie was born 3 years after me, and from the moment she arrived she seemed to slot into my mother's heart in a way I never had. They shared a language I did not speak. They liked the same television shows, the same styles, the same kinds of conversations that circled around feelings and social dynamics and who said what to whom. Natalie was warm and funny and effortlessly charming. She could walk into any room and make people feel immediately comfortable. I was different. I was quieter. I liked books and numbers and solving problems that had actual answers. I spent my Saturday mornings as a child sitting with my father at his kitchen table while he went over property contracts, not because he asked me to but because I wanted to be there. I liked the way numbers made sense. I liked the way a balance sheet told a story if you knew how to read it. My father saw something in me that my mother never looked for. He used to call me his little analyst. He used to say that I had a brain that was built for business, and he said it like it was the greatest compliment in the world. To my mother, it sounded like he was saying I was not soft enough, not social enough, not the right kind of daughter. I am not going to stand here and tell you my childhood was terrible, because it was not. I had food and clothes and a roof and parents who stayed together. But there is a particular kind of loneliness that comes from growing up in a room where your mother is always looking slightly past you, always turning her attention toward the other child, always finding the other one more interesting, more lovable, more worthy of the focused glow of her attention. That kind of loneliness does not leave bruises. It leaves something quieter and harder to name. I learned to be useful. That was how I made myself matter. If I could not be the charming one, I could be the capable one. If I could not make my mother laugh, I could solve the problem she did not know how to solve. I learned that being needed was the closest thing to being loved that I could reliably access. That is a terrible thing to learn at age 9. But I learned it thoroughly. I went to college on a partial scholarship and worked part-time throughout to cover the rest. I studied finance and business. I graduated in the top 5% of my class. I had job offers from 3 different firms before my diploma was printed. I was 23 years old and I was standing at the beginning of something real. And then my father got sick. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer the spring of my graduation year. By the time they found it, it had already spread. The doctors were honest with us. We had maybe 18 months if we were lucky. We were not lucky. We had 11. In those 11 months, my father and I talked more deeply than we ever had before. We talked about the company, Morrison Properties, which by then had grown to manage over 40 commercial properties across central Ohio. We talked about the employees who depended on it. We talked about the debts he had taken on during a bad stretch 3 years earlier when a major tenant had defaulted on 3 leases simultaneously. The company was not in crisis, but it was not healthy either. There were structural problems, some bad contracts, some aging properties that needed investment or exit strategies. We talked about my mother, which was harder. My father loved Patricia in the complicated way that people love beautiful, difficult things. He saw her clearly, I think, more clearly than she knew. He saw the way she favored Natalie. He saw the way she had never quite figured out what to do with me. He was sad about it in a quiet way he never fully expressed. And we talked about what would happen after. In the last weeks of his life, my father restructured everything. He worked with his attorney, a man named Gerald Whitmore who had been his closest friend since college, to put things in place. He left Morrison Properties to all 3 of us but with very different terms. He left me 60% of the company shares and designated me as majority shareholder. He left my mother and Natalie 20% each. He made me the sole signatory on the family trust, which held the liquid assets that funded the family's lifestyle. He did not explain all of this to me directly. He just held my hand one afternoon when the light was coming through the hospital window at a low golden angle and he said, "You are the one I trust with this, Claire. You always have been. Promise me you will take care of them. But take care of yourself too. Do not forget that part." I promised. I kept the first part of that promise for 11 years. I forgot the second part almost immediately. When my father died, I was 24 years old and I was standing in front of a company with real problems and a mother who had no idea how to run it and a 21-year-old sister who was more interested in her social life than in anything involving spreadsheets. I was terrified. I was grieving. I was also the only person in that family who had any idea what to do. So I did it. I spent the first year barely sleeping. I renegotiated the problem leases. I brought in 2 new commercial tenants who had been circling the portfolio for years but had not felt confident in the leadership. I restructured the debt. I made hard calls about properties that needed to be sold and I made them without flinching because I could not afford to flinch. I moved myself into the CFO role formally and I built a small but excellent team around me. By the end of year 2, Morrison Properties was not just surviving. It was genuinely profitable. By year 5, we had doubled the portfolio. By year 10, we had tripled it. During all of that time, I was also writing checks. Every single month, I transferred $8,000 into my mother's personal account. Every single month, I transferred $3,500 into Natalie's account. I paid the mortgage on the house my mother lived in, a 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood that cost me $11,000 a month. I paid the lease on my mother's Mercedes and Natalie's Range Rover. I covered the credit cards they both used freely. I paid for the vacations, the spa memberships, the personal trainer, the interior decorator my mother hired 3 times in 5 years because she kept changing her mind about the living room. When Natalie decided she wanted to try her hand at starting a clothing boutique, I gave her $40,000 of startup capital. The boutique lasted 8 months before she lost interest and closed it. She did not pay me back. She did not apologize. She did not even mention it. When my mother decided she wanted to renovate her kitchen, I paid for it. $62,000. She sent me a photo of the finished result without any text. Just the photo. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just evidence that it looked exactly the way she wanted. I told myself this was what family did. I told myself my father had asked me to take care of them and I was honoring that. I told myself that the fact that they never said thank you did not mean they were not grateful. Maybe they just were not the kind of people who said things out loud. Maybe gratitude was expressed in other ways that I was missing. I kept not getting birthday calls. I kept being the last to know about family events. I kept finding out after the fact that my mother and Natalie had gotten together for lunch, for shopping trips, for spa days, for all the small ordinary gatherings that make up a relationship, and I had not been invited. Not because they forgot. I eventually understood it was not forgetting. It was simply that they did not think of including me. I was the utility provider, not the guest. I told myself I was fine with this because the alternative, admitting that I had spent a decade pouring money and effort into relationships that gave me back nothing, was too painful to look at directly. And then I saw the screenshots. It was a Tuesday evening in February, about 3 weeks before my birthday. I was eating dinner alone at my kitchen counter the way I did most evenings, reviewing a contract on my laptop while working through takeout pasta, when my phone buzzed with a message from Natalie. She had apparently meant to forward something to a different chat and had sent it to our shared thread by accident. The message read, "Remind Mom about Saturday. I want to discuss the shares before the tax deadline." I stared at it. Shares? What shares? What Saturday? I replied almost immediately. What shares are you talking about, Nat? There was a pause. Then, never mind, wrong chat. But something in the phrasing had already lodged in my brain like a splinter. The shares. Not some shares. Not Dad's shares. The shares, as if they were already mid-conversation about something specific. I sat with that for a few hours and then I did something I almost never did. I looked carefully at the message again. It had come through as a forwarded message from another thread. Natalie had not just typed it to me. She had forwarded it from somewhere else. And in the preview, just barely visible before the forward indicator, there was a timestamp and a name. Mom. There was a group chat. A group chat that did not include me. I felt foolish for being surprised. I felt foolish for the way my chest tightened like something was being squeezed. I should not have been surprised. I had spent years being on the outside of my own family. But somehow seeing concrete evidence of it, knowing there was an actual thread, an actual ongoing conversation I was excluded from, made it land differently. I did not say anything to Natalie. I just waited. 2 days later, she made another mistake. She screenshot something from the other chat and sent it to me thinking she was sending it to my mother. The screenshot showed a conversation I was never meant to see. It was not a long conversation. It was just a handful of messages. But each one was a small explosion. Natalie had written, "Should we even tell Claire about the Saturday meeting?" My mother had replied, "Not yet. She handles the operational side. This is more of a strategy discussion." Natalie had said, "She always acts like she runs everything. It gets exhausting." My mother had replied, "You have always had better instincts for this. Like your grandmother. Your grandmother understood how to build relationships, how to make people feel valued. That is the real business skill. Claire is good at the numbers, but that is not the same as leadership." I read those messages 4 times. Then I set my phone down very carefully on the counter and sat completely still for a long time. 11 years. I had given 11 years of my life to rebuilding and growing that company. I had worked 60 and 70-hour weeks. I had missed holidays and vacations and social events and the slow accumulation of a personal life because the company always needed something. I had put almost $2 million of personal support into their lives over that decade. And to them, I handled the operational side. I was good at numbers. Not leadership, not strategy, just the numbers. The Saturday meeting was on March 15th. My birthday. They were going to discuss selling company shares on my birthday without inviting me. And they were going to do it in the house I paid for using the credit cards I funded after I paid for the cars they drove and the mortgage and the groceries that came from the delivery service I had set up for my mother when her back was bad 2 years ago and never cancelled. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table in the dark with a yellow legal pad and I wrote down every single financial arrangement I had ever made for my family. The monthly transfers, the one-time payments, the loans that were never repaid, the credit card balances I had covered, the house, the cars, the boutique that failed, the kitchen renovation, the vacations, each one carefully tallied from memory and from the credit card statements I pulled up on my laptop at 2 in the morning. When I added it all up, the number staring back at me from the bottom of the page was $1,947,000. Almost $2 million. In 11 years. To people who thought my skill set was limited to the operational side. I thought about my father. I thought about sitting at his hospital bedside, holding his hand while the light came through the window. You are the one I trust with this. Take care of them, but take care of yourself too. I had kept exactly half of that promise. I remembered Gerald Whitmore, my father's attorney, who sent me a message every year on the anniversary of my father's death. Just a short, careful note. Thinking of you today. Your father was proud of you. I had always replied briefly and moved on. I had never fully understood why he kept reaching out with such consistency, year after year, when I had never given him much to work with in response. Now, sitting at my kitchen table at 2:30 in the morning with a legal pad covered in damning arithmetic, I started to wonder. I picked up my phone and found Gerald's contact. I did not call him then, it was the middle of the night, but I held the phone and thought about all the years I had been too busy or too closed off to pay attention to something that had clearly been trying to get my attention. The next morning I called him. He answered on the second ring. Claire. His voice was warm and unhurried the way it had always been. His voice sounded like leather chairs and old books. I always thought that. Gerald, I said, I need to ask you something. Of course. Has my father left anything for me? Any instructions? Anything that was supposed to come to me eventually? There was a pause that lasted just long enough to tell me the answer before he spoke it. He left you a letter, Gerald said. He asked me to hold it until I felt you were ready. Or until you came to me. He was very specific. It was not mine to give. It had to be your choice to receive it. How long have you been waiting for me to call? 11 years, Claire. Almost exactly. I pressed my hand flat against the kitchen counter and breathed slowly. He knew, I said. He saw clearly. He loved your mother, but he saw her clearly. He worried about you. He wanted you to have something waiting for you when you needed it. I need it now, I said. I will bring it to you whenever you are ready. Come Thursday, I said. Come to the office. I spent the days between that phone call and Gerald's visit very deliberately not doing anything drastic. I wanted to see the truth of March 15th before I acted on anything. I wanted to witness it with my own eyes rather than react to screenshots and speculation. Part of me, the part that had been making excuses for my family for over a decade, still wanted to be wrong. Still wanted there to be some explanation I was not seeing. I let myself hope, just a little, that my birthday would change something. That maybe, even now, they would remember. March 15th arrived the way birthdays do when no one is celebrating them. It looked like any other Thursday. I woke at 6:15 to an alarm, made coffee, stood at my kitchen window watching the gray morning lighten. 35 years old. A new decade was behind me and a new one ahead. I was healthy and professionally successful and completely alone in the particular way that is worse than ordinary loneliness because it happens inside the structure of a family. I waited until noon before sending anything. I wanted to give them every possible chance. I sat at my work desk through the morning, reviewing contracts, answering emails, doing all the ordinary work of my ordinary day. At noon I opened the family thread, the one I was actually included in, the one that had been silent for 3 weeks, and I typed a single sentence. Today is my birthday. Did anyone remember? I put my phone face down on my desk. I went back to work. I did not check it. I reviewed a lease extension document. I called a contractor about a property in Westerville that needed roof repairs. I answered 17 emails. I ate a sandwich at my desk. I kept working. At 4:14 in the afternoon, my phone vibrated. I turned it over slowly. My mother's name was on the screen. For one brief irrational second, my heart lifted. Maybe she remembered. Maybe she was calling to apologize for the silence. Maybe something in that birthday text had landed and she was reaching out. I opened the message. We have decided we need some space from you, Claire. Please do not reach out to us for a while. We need time to deal with some things without the added stress. I read it twice. Then I watched the notification appear beneath it. Natalie had reacted to the message with a heart. My 29-year-old sister had put a heart on the message where my mother told me to go away. On my birthday, I set the phone face down again. I sat for what felt like a long time but was probably about 4 minutes. Outside my office window, the world continued. A delivery truck passed. A couple walked a dog. Someone's phone rang in the outer office and was answered cheerfully. Then I did something almost automatic. I opened Instagram and searched for Natalie's profile. She had never added me. Her profile was public because she was always building her personal brand for projects that lasted a few months and then faded. Her most recent story was posted 40 minutes ago. It was a champagne glass raised toward a camera. Behind it, soft pink and gold decorations. A banner in the background. The banner was slightly out of focus, but I zoomed in and could make out the words. Happy birthday. My hands were perfectly steady. I noticed that. No shaking, no trembling. Something had gone very still inside me. I scrolled through the story sequence. The first clip showed the exterior of the house, my house, the one I paid $11,000 a month for. Pink balloons framed the front door. A man in a white vest was parking a black SUV. Valets. My mother had hired valets. The second clip was a boomerang of my mother adjusting a massive flower arrangement on the dining table. She was wearing her good pearls, the ones she wore when she wanted to impress business contacts. The third clip was a guest list in my mother's elegant handwriting, held up and filmed slowly as though proud of it. I recognized the names before I finished reading. Thomas Waverley, the largest single client of Morrison Properties. The man whose portfolio of 12 properties I had spent 2 years carefully managing through a tenancy transition. Sandra Ellison. The woman who owned 40% of the commercial blocks on the city's east side and who I had been cultivating for years toward a partnership agreement. Richard Cho. The investment fund manager whose firm I had been pitching for 8 months about a capital infusion project. These were not family friends. These were the people at the center of my professional world. The relationships I had spent years building, attending industry dinners, sending birthday cards to, remembering the names of spouses and children, putting in the careful patient work of professional trust. They were in the house I paid for, at a party I was not invited to, having just been told to go away and not contact my family. The fourth clip was the birthday cake. A 3-tier confection covered in fresh flowers and gold leaf. The name written in elegant cursive on the front was Natalie. Natalie's birthday was April 28. Today was March 15, my birthday. My mother had thrown a birthday party for the wrong daughter on the right daughter's actual birthday and had invited everyone who mattered in my professional world to attend, using money that came from my accounts, in a house that existed because of my signature on a lease agreement. I sat with that for a long moment. Then I called Gerald Whitmore. Bring the letter tonight, I said. I will meet you wherever you want. He came to my apartment at 7. He looked older than I had expected. The years had gathered quietly in the lines around his eyes, but his presence was still that of someone who had seen a great deal and been steadied by it rather than diminished. He sat across from me at my kitchen table and he held a sealed envelope. Before you read it, he said, I want you to understand something about your father. He restructured everything in the last 6 months of his life. He was very deliberate. He thought about this for a long time. I know, I said. He told me some of it. He did not tell you all of it. Gerald set the envelope on the table between us. He knew Patricia would eventually move toward consolidating control of the company. He had seen her and Natalie circling the share structure even in the months before he passed. He anticipated that they would wait until you were either too invested or too tired or too emotionally worn down to push back. How long did he think I would let it go on? Gerald was quiet for a moment. He told me he worried you would let it go on much longer than was good for you. He said, Claire does not know when to stop taking care of people, Gerald. She learned it too young and she learned it too well. He paused. He said that was his fault and he was sorry for it. I looked at the envelope. My father's handwriting on the front. For Claire, open when you are ready. I broke the seal. The paper was thick, slightly yellowed at the edges the way paper does when it sits in a drawer for a decade. His handwriting was the same as it had always been, neat and deliberate, slightly crowded, the handwriting of someone who thought faster than they wrote and was always trying to keep up. My dear Claire, he had written. If you are reading this, it means something has finally pushed you far enough to ask the right questions. I am sorry it took so long to reach you. I am sorry that whatever happened to bring you here was painful enough to do it. I have watched you your whole life. You are not easy to watch. You are so capable and so unseen at the same time. Your mother loves you, but she does not see you clearly, and I do not think she ever will. That is not something you can fix, and it is not something that reflects on your worth. It reflects on the limits of her vision. I have left you the company because you are the only one who will take care of it properly. But I want to be honest with you about something I was not honest enough about while I was alive. I left it to you partly to protect you. The structure I have put in place means that you cannot be pushed out or outvoted. It means that whatever happens, you have the ground beneath your feet. But I also left it to you because I was a coward about some things. I should have been more direct with your mother. I should have made clearer what the expectations were. Instead, I tried to arrange things so that you would have the power to protect yourself without ever having to confront anyone, and that was unfair to you. It put the burden on you again, the same burden I was always putting on you, the one where you are the capable one, so you are the one who has to handle it. If they have hurt you, believe what the hurt is telling you. Believe what you have seen. Your loyalty and your love are real, and they are good things. But they are not required to be spent on people who do not honor them. Everything I have left you is yours. Not for them, for you. The signing authority, the trust, the majority holding, all of it is yours because you earned it and because you deserve to have the power to protect yourself when you need it. Walking away from people who do not see you is not betrayal. It is survival. You are not responsible for their lives. You have already given far more than I ever wanted you to give. I am proud of you. I have always been proud of you. I am sorry I did not say it loudly enough while I was here to say it. Take care of yourself first, Claire. I mean that. First, I love you more than I was good at showing. Your father. I do not know how long I sat with that letter in my hands. Gerald sat quietly across the table, not filling the silence, just being present in it the way you can be present with someone when you have known them long enough to understand that they sometimes need the quiet more than they need the company. When I finally looked up, my eyes were wet but my voice was steady. What are my options? I said. Gerald walked me through everything slowly and carefully. As majority shareholder and sole signatory on the trust, I had the ability to freeze all automated distributions immediately. I could restructure the trust payments, change the terms, reduce the amounts, tie them to conditions. I could, if I chose, dissolve the trust entirely and rebuild it in a different form. The house lease was in my name. I could give notice at any time. The cars were on leases I co-signed. I could contact the dealerships. The credit cards were on accounts I controlled. Everything, every single thing that constituted the infrastructure of their lives, ran through me. You are not going to cut them off entirely, Gerald said. It was not a question. No, I said, that is not who I want to be. But I am done being invisible. What are you planning? I stood up and walked to my bedroom closet. I pulled out a charcoal gray blazer, the one I wore to board meetings when I needed to be taken seriously without appearing aggressive. I am going to that party. Gerald was quiet for a moment. Is that wise? They are telling my professional network that I do not exist. They are throwing a party in my house with my money and letting my clients believe I am irrelevant. I want to walk into that room and let the truth do the work. Gerald was quiet for a moment longer. Then he said, I was invited to that party, Claire. Thomas Waverley asked me to attend regarding some documents he wanted reviewed. I turned to look at him. They do not know you represent me. Your mother assumes I am simply the company's general counsel. She has never taken the time to understand the corporate structure in any detail. So you will be there. I will be there. And Thomas Waverley will be there. He will. I looked at myself in the bedroom mirror for a moment. 35 years old, the same day my father had built into me like a foundation, the same birthday that had just been used by my family as a backdrop for a party that was not for me. I will see you there, I told Gerald. The drive to the house took 20 minutes. I knew every inch of the property. I had toured it before signing the lease. I had approved the renovation budget. I had stood in that kitchen arguing with a contractor over the cost of custom cabinetry. I had written the check for the rose bushes my mother had planted along the front walk the previous spring. I handed my keys to the valet without a word. He did not look at me twice. I walked up the stone path through the pale light coming from inside. The front door was open. Laughter spilled out into the March air. The smell of catered food and expensive perfume. Someone had hired a string quartet. I could hear them playing something classical from somewhere inside. I did not go in through the front door. Not yet. I circled to the side of the house where the French doors opened onto the living room. The curtains were partly drawn, but there was a gap of about 8 inches. I stood in the side garden in the shadows and I looked through. My mother was in the center of the room. She was wearing the green dress she saved for important events, and she was holding court the way she always did when she had an audience, gesturing with her champagne glass, leaning forward to make her points, laughing at exactly the right moments. Thomas Waverley was standing close to her, nodding. Sandra Ellison was to her left. Richard Cho was nearby, talking to another man I recognized as one of Thomas Waverley's associates. I watched for a minute, maybe 2. I watched my mother perform. Then I heard her say my name. She said, "My older daughter," and then she made a small dismissive sound. Claire has some difficulties. Emotionally. Very hard to be around sometimes. We have had to take a step back for our own well-being. Someone, a woman I did not recognize, made a sympathetic murmur. It has been painful, my mother continued. She touched her collarbone in the way she did when she was performing vulnerability. Some people simply cannot maintain healthy relationships no matter how much you want it for them. We have had to accept that. Thomas Waverley said, "I thought Claire ran the company. I have been working with her for years." My mother laughed. "She does some administrative work. Filing, that sort of thing. Natalie is really the one with the business mind in this family." She gestured toward Natalie, who was across the room laughing with a small cluster of guests. I stood in the dark garden and I listened to my mother describe me to my biggest professional client as an emotionally troubled woman who handled filing. Something settled into place inside me. Not anger. Something cooler and more final than anger. Recognition, maybe. This was who they were. This was what they had always been doing, just in rooms I had not been standing outside of. I walked to the front door and I walked in. The foyer was filled with people. The music from the string quartet filtered through from the back of the house. Conversations hummed, glasses clinked. The caterers moved efficiently through the crowd with trays of small passed items. I walked toward the living room. Conversations paused as I passed. I was wearing my board blazer over a simple dress and I looked exactly like what I was, a person who had come from work, not a party. I did not smile at anyone. I did not rush. My mother saw me before I reached the center of the room. I watched the color leave her face. It happened very quickly, a visible draining, as if someone had opened a valve. Her champagne glass tilted slightly in her hand. "Claire," her voice came out barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" The conversations around us had not stopped yet, but they were quieting. People noticed the sudden stillness in my mother's face. I looked around the room. I kept my voice level and pleasant. "I heard there was a birthday party," I said. "I thought I would come by and say hello." Natalie appeared through the crowd. Her face showed a confusion that had not yet become fear. She looked at me and then at our mother. "Your birthday is not until next month," she said. "No, Natalie. My birthday is today. March 15th. Yours is April 28th. I looked at the banner. The cake. The decorations. 35 years old today. The silence had spread. Most of the nearby conversations had stopped. Thomas Waverley said, "Wait a moment." His voice was careful and measured. He looked at my mother and then at me. He said, "You are Claire Morrison." "I am." He turned to my mother. His expression was now something more serious. "You told me Claire handles administrative work. Filing." My mother opened her mouth. Thomas Waverley continued, "Claire Morrison is the Chief Financial Officer of Morrison Properties. She has been the primary point of contact for every significant decision in our business relationship for the past 8 years." He paused. "She personally restructured the Meridian Center deal when it was 6 hours away from collapsing. That deal is the cornerstone of my current portfolio." A sound moved through the room, not quite a gasp, more like a collective intake of breath. Sandra Ellison stepped forward from the edge of the group. She looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. "Patricia," she said slowly, "you told Richard and me that the company was essentially family managed by you and Natalie. That Claire was in a support capacity." My mother said nothing. Natalie said, She manages the finances. That is a support function. Sandra Ellison turned to look at Natalie with an expression that was absolutely not a support function, and Natalie seemed to understand immediately that she had made a mistake. Gerald Whitmore stepped forward from near the back of the room. His voice was calm and carried the particular authority of a man who has never needed to raise it. As legal counsel for Morrison Properties, he said, I can confirm for anyone who is uncertain that Claire Morrison holds 60% of company shares as majority owner. She is the sole authorized signatory on all major company instruments, including the family trust which funds this household and the expenses associated with it. He let that sit for exactly the right amount of time. Nothing in this company, or in the financial structure that supports this family, moves without Claire's authorization. The room went very quiet. I watched my mother's face. I watched the moment when the performance fell away and what was underneath it was visible. It was fear. Plain, unadorned, and completely deserved. My mother took a step toward me. Her voice had shifted. It was softer now, reaching for something that sounded like warmth. Claire, sweetheart, this is all a misunderstanding. I never meant to imply. The message you sent me today was very clear, I said. You asked for space. You said not to contact you. I did not contact you. I came to greet my professional network at a gathering I was not invited to, in a house that I pay for, on my birthday, which you used to throw a party for my sister. I looked at the banner one more time. Natalie's birthday is April 28th, I said again, clearly, to the room. Today is March 15th. Thomas Waverley cleared his throat. I think I need to make a call, he said quietly. He stepped back and pulled out his phone. Sandra Ellison caught my eye. She nodded once, a small precise nod, and walked toward the door. Several other guests found reasons to begin moving toward exits, the polite thinning of a room where something has gone irreversibly wrong. My mother tried once more. She reached out and touched my arm. Please stay. We need to talk. We can sort this out. I removed her hand gently. You asked for space, I said. I am giving you exactly what you asked for. I walked out. The drive home was quiet. No music, no radio, no noise of any kind. Just the hum of the engine and the slow progression of streetlights. I was not triumphant. I was not angry. I was tired in a way that felt clean, like the tired after a very long run, exhausted but finished, the way you feel when something is genuinely over. I went home and I sat at my desk and I worked. I called the trust administrator and exercised the freeze provision. Pending a comprehensive review, all automated distributions from the family trust were to be paused immediately. The administrator was professional and efficient. No questions beyond the necessary procedural ones. I sent Gerald a detailed email outlining what I wanted reviewed. Full audit of all trust distributions over the past 11 years. Structural review of all financial arrangements. Preparation of a revised distribution plan. I told him I was not looking to cause harm. I was looking to build something sustainable and fair. Then I opened my phone settings and I blocked my mother's number. Then Natalie's. Then the family group thread, the one I was actually included in. They had asked for space. I was giving it to them in every form I could think of. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. I turned off the laptop. I went to bed. For the first time in 11 years I slept through the entire night without my phone waking me. No emergencies. No late calls from my mother saying the heat was making a strange noise or Natalie had a crisis with her bank account. Just silence and sleep. 8 full hours of it. I woke up to birdsong and the particular quality of early morning light that feels like a second chance at something. Then I remembered to check my phone. 99 missed calls. The counter on my voicemail had rolled over. 43 voicemail messages. The call log was a dense scroll of my mother's number, Natalie's number, and 6 other numbers I did not recognize. Borrowed phones, friends' phones, every avenue they could think of. I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to the voicemails in order. The first cluster from the previous evening was angry. My mother's voice, clipped and controlled. Claire, this is not acceptable. Call me back immediately. Then Natalie, higher and sharper. What did you do to the credit card? It is not working. Then my mother again, slightly less controlled. Whatever point you are trying to make, you have made it. Fix this. By midnight, the tone had shifted. My mother at 11:47. Please call me. We need to talk. I did not mean what I said today. I was under a great deal of stress. Please. Natalie at 12:15. I cannot get the card to work at the gas station. This is not funny. Please call me back. My mother at 2 in the morning. Her voice cracked at the edges. I know I hurt you today. I know I have hurt you. Please just answer the phone. We can talk about this. I love you, Claire. Natalie at 3:40, crying. Please, I am sorry. I did not understand how things worked. I did not know. By 6 in the morning, the panic had settled into something more desperate. My mother at 6:22. The trust account is frozen. The bank told us there is a review in progress. They will not give us any details. Please, I am asking you to please just call me back. Whatever I need to do, I will do it. Please. I listened to all 43 messages. Then I put the phone down and made coffee and stood at my kitchen window watching the morning come in. It was a clear March morning. The kind that promises spring while still feeling like winter. I liked mornings like that. The in-between ones. My email held similar things. Multiple messages from my mother, starting with anger and moving through denial and ending with something that looked like desperation. A message from Natalie in capital letters that I did not read all the way through. A long message from my mother with the subject line, "Please read this," that I saved for later. And at the bottom of my inbox, a message from Thomas Waverley. Claire, I want to apologize for anything I may have inadvertently done to make your situation more difficult by attending last night. I did not know the full context. I want you to know that my professional trust and respect are entirely with you. I have cancelled all discussions I had with your mother, and I would like to meet this week to continue our work through the proper channels, which is to say through you. You have my complete support. Please let me know when you are available. I read that message 3 times. Then I made a note in my planner for a Thursday meeting with Thomas Waverley. Gerald called that afternoon with updates. The trust freeze had gone through cleanly. All automated payments had stopped as of midnight. The house mortgage payment scheduled for the 1st of the month would not process. The car lease payments would not process. The credit cards had hit their limits and the automatic payments to zero them out monthly had not gone through. My mother had already called the landlord of the house. He had reached out to Gerald confused about the payment failure. Gerald had explained that the matter was under legal review and that he would be in touch within 30 days. The landlord had called my mother back and told her she had 30 days to make the payment or begin formal lease termination proceedings. My mother had apparently told him it was a banking error. Natalie's car dealership had sent a missed payment notice. Her personal trainer had texted her asking about the overdue invoice that usually processed automatically. The spa where she had apparently tried to book a same-day appointment after the party debacle had declined her card at the front desk. Sandra Ellison sent flowers to my office with a handwritten note. I owe you an apology. I was told things about you that were completely false. I am glad I know the truth now. I would very much like to meet for coffee at your convenience. This was also accompanied by a reference to a development opportunity she had been sitting on for 6 months that she now wanted to discuss exclusively with me. Richard Cho sent a brief email expressing similar sentiments and requesting a call. And Gerald himself reported that 3 of the other guests from the previous evening had reached out to him directly to express embarrassment about having accepted a false picture of my role in the company and to indicate they would like to engage with me directly going forward. My mother had spent years carefully managing the narrative of who I was in professional circles. In one evening, the story had come apart at every seam. I want to be honest about something. I did not feel satisfied by any of this in the way that stories about revenge are supposed to make you feel satisfied. There was no flush of victory. There was no sense of scores being settled. There was something else, something quieter and more complicated. It felt like the enormous ongoing effort of pretending that things were fine had finally stopped, and the silence where that effort used to be was both relief and grief at the same time. Because the thing about finally seeing your family clearly is that what you are seeing is loss. Not what happened to you in the past, but the fact that what you were hoping for, that thing you kept working toward, the version of the family where they saw you and loved you the way you needed, that was never going to happen. It was not going to happen because of anything I did or did not do. It was not going to happen because they were simply not capable of it, at least not yet, maybe not ever. Losing a hope you did not know you were still holding is its own kind of grief. I let myself be sad about it. Not for long, but I let it be real. My mother came to my office 4 days after the party. My assistant buzzed me at 10:15 in the morning. "There is a woman in reception," she said carefully. "She says she is your mother. She is upset." I closed my laptop. "I will handle it." When I came out to the lobby, my mother was at the reception desk. She was not the composed, pearl-wearing woman who had held court at a birthday party 4 days earlier. Her hair was less precisely arranged. Her blazer had a small spot near the lapel that she had not noticed or not been able to address. She looked like someone who had not been sleeping well. She turned when she heard my footsteps, and for just a second something moved across her face that might have been relief. "Claire, thank God. I have been calling." "I know. This is my workplace." "Then let us go outside." Her voice dropped. "Please, we need to talk." "What would you like to talk about?" I asked. She looked at me for a moment, and then around her at the office, at the logo on the wall, at the receptionist trying to look occupied. "All of this," she said, with a small gesture. "This situation. You know things have gotten out of hand. Whatever I said, whatever was misunderstood, I want to fix it." "What was misunderstood?" I asked. "Claire," her voice took on a slightly harder edge. "You know what I mean. You are being deliberately difficult. I am asking a clarifying question." I kept my voice very calm. "What part of the last 11 years would you like to revisit and interpret differently?" Her mouth tightened. "You are making this into something it is not." "I am a person, Mom." I said it quietly. "I am your daughter and I am a person, and I spent 11 years taking care of everything that made your life comfortable, and in that time you did not once call me just to see how I was. You did not remember my birthday. You built a social identity around telling people I was not important while spending my money to fund it. Those things happened. They are not misunderstandings. I did not know you felt. You did not ask." She was quiet for a moment. Then she tried a different approach, the maternal concern angle. "Are you doing all right? Are you eating? You look tired." I looked at her steadily. "I am fine. If you want to talk about our relationship, about us, I am open to that conversation. But it needs to happen in the right setting and with the right intentions. If what you want to talk about is the trust and the accounts, that goes through Gerald. I do not need a lawyer to talk to my own daughter." "You have had 11 years of access to your daughter," I said. "You did not use it." I turned and walked back into the office. She did not follow. Natalie's situation unraveled more quickly than my mother's, and I heard about it not directly but through the ordinary channels of mutual acquaintances and eventually through a LinkedIn message that arrived 9 days after the party. The European trip she had been planning for April had to be cancelled. The travel deposit was declined and she did not have the funds to cover it herself. Her boyfriend, a man named Tyler who had been living off her credit card for the better part of a year, had moved out when the cards stopped working. He had apparently been quite direct about his reasoning, which was that the financial situation was not what he had signed up for and he was choosing not to be part of it. Her friends had started asking questions after word spread about the party. "Your sister is the CFO of the company, but you always said she just did admin." This question, asked by more than one person who had attended or heard about the evening, turned out to be a more uncomfortable question than Natalie had anticipated. Because Natalie had genuinely believed it. Or she had believed a version of reality that her mother had built for her carefully over many years. One where Natalie was the one with real potential and I was the capable but limited support staff. Having that version of reality publicly dismantled was not just embarrassing. It was destabilizing. The LinkedIn message came on a Thursday morning. "Hi Claire, I know we have not been close. I realize that is partly on me. I did not fully understand what your role was or how things worked, and I am sorry for that. I am really struggling right now and I was hoping we could talk. I know I have not been a good sister and I want to fix that." I read it carefully 3 times. What struck me was the phrase "I did not fully understand what your role was." It was not "I am sorry I treated you like you did not matter." It was not "I am sorry for the 11 years of dismissal or the birthday text or the party or the private group chat or any of the specific things that had actually happened." It was "I did not understand your role. As if the core problem had been a misunderstanding of organizational structure rather than 11 years of treating another person as invisible. She was not sorry for how she had treated me. She was sorry that the money had stopped. That distinction mattered more than I was able to fully articulate in that moment, but I knew it was important. I saved the message and did not reply immediately. 2 weeks after my birthday, I wrote letters. Gerald delivered them by hand to the house. I wrote carefully. I told them I was not cutting them off, but I was also not continuing a relationship that functioned as a one-way transfer. I told them that if they wanted to be in my life, it was available to them, but it would have to be built on something real, something mutual, something more than financial dependence. I restructured the trust. Each of them would receive a fixed monthly amount. My mother would receive $2,500 per month. Natalie would receive $1,200 per month. These amounts were sufficient to cover modest living expenses. They were not sufficient to fund the lifestyle they had been living. The house lease would not be renewed. I gave my mother 60 days' notice. The car leases were mine to manage. I would allow them to run out and not renew them. I told them that if they wanted more than the base allowance, they were going to need to generate it themselves. Natalie was 29. It was time for her to have a professional life that she had built rather than one she had borrowed. I told them I loved them. I told them that love did not mean accepting ongoing disrespect and that it did not mean funding people who had consistently treated me as if I did not exist. I told them my door was open for a real conversation, about us, not about money, whenever they were ready to have it. Gerald reported that my mother cried when she read the letter. He said she sat with it for a long time. He said he thought she might actually be beginning to understand something. He could not be sure. Natalie, he said, threw her letter across the room and then picked it up and read it again. I took that as a start. The months that followed were the quietest months I could remember since my father died. Not empty, not lonely in the old way. Different. I had cleared away so much noise that I could hear myself think for the first time in a very long time. I focused on the company. There were good things happening. Thomas Waverley and I rebuilt our working relationship with complete clarity about what the structure was and where decision-making authority lived. Sandra Ellison's development opportunity turned out to be genuinely excellent and we moved quickly into a formal partnership agreement. Richard Cho's investment fund came through with a capital commitment that opened up 2 properties we had been wanting to acquire for 3 years. I hired a new operations director who was excellent at the parts of the work I found least interesting, which freed me to focus on the parts one found most interesting. The company grew. I also started doing things I had not done in years, the small things that accumulate into a life that feels like your own. I started going to a Saturday morning yoga class not because it was supposed to be good for stress management but because I had always liked the discipline of it and I had stopped going years ago when the weekends filled up with family obligations. I started cooking properly instead of eating takeout at my desk. I called an old college friend, a woman named Meg who had moved to Portland years earlier and whom I had let the friendship with slowly thin out, and we talked for 2 hours and then planned a visit. I started understanding what my father had meant by the second half of his promise. Take care of yourself, too. Natalie got a job. I heard about it from a mutual acquaintance who mentioned it in passing. Entry-level position at a marketing firm downtown. Long hours, not great pay. Entry-level in every sense. She had apparently struggled with the adjustment. The mutual acquaintance said she complained regularly but showed up every day. That was something. That was real. My mother moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. Smaller than the house, much smaller, but it was hers in the sense that she was choosing it with a budget that was connected to reality. Gerald said she had been angry about it for a few weeks and then had gradually shifted into something that looked like adaptation. She had joined a book club. She had started having dinner with an old friend she had lost touch with years ago. She was building something on a smaller, more honest scale. We had not spoken. Not really. There had been a birthday card from my mother on my half-birthday in September. She had written something brief. Thinking of you. Hoping you are well. She had gotten the date slightly wrong, writing September 14th when my half-birthday was the 15th, but she had tried. That was something. There had been a text from Natalie 2 months after the party. I do not know how to say this right, but I know I was not a good sister. I am sorry. I am trying to figure out some things. I had replied. I know. I am glad you are trying. When you want to talk, I am here. She had not followed up yet. I held the door open. I do not know what the future holds for these relationships. I would be lying if I said the door was closed or that I had fully let go of the hope that something real could still grow. My father loved my mother even while seeing her clearly. I am not capable of simply turning off the part of me that hopes for something more than what we have had. But hoping for more has to be separate from accepting less than I deserve. Those two things can exist at the same time once you learn the difference between them. What I know now, sitting 3 months past my 35th birthday and looking back at everything that led to that evening and everything that came after, is something my father tried to give me all those years ago and that I could not receive until the moment I was finally ready. The letter did not give me permission to be angry. It gave me permission to be done. Not done with my family, but done with the version of myself that made herself endlessly available to people who only called when they needed something. Done with the identity I had built around being useful rather than valued. Done with the story where the only version of love I could access was the one I earned by making myself indispensable. My worth is not what I can provide. My worth is not the sum total of the checks I sign or the deals I close or the problems I solve. My worth exists independent of all of that, and it has always existed independent of all of that. I just spent 35 years learning to believe it. There is a particular kind of grief in understanding that the family you grew up in was not the family you needed. Not because they were monsters, not because they did not love you in whatever way they were capable of, but because love in the wrong shape can still hollow you out over time if you let it. I am not hollowed out anymore. I celebrated my 35th birthday on September 15 with a slice of lemon cake from the bakery on the corner of my street and a glass of sparkling water on my apartment balcony as the sun went down. No one called. No one sent flowers. I watched the city quiet down into evening, and I felt something I had not felt on a birthday since I was 12 years old, when my father made me a chocolate cake with uneven writing and called me something proud and private that was just for the two of us. I felt seen. Not by another person, by myself. I felt like I was someone worth looking at. That is the gift I did not know I was waiting for. Take care of yourself first. He knew. I finally do. If you have ever given everything you had to people who only saw what you could give, this story is yours too. I see you, and I hope you know that the moment you decide to be done is not a failure. It is the beginning of something real. My name is Claire Morrison. I am 35 years old. I am the majority owner and chief financial officer of Morrison Properties, a company my father built and that I rebuilt and that I will continue to build for as long as I choose to. And for the first time in a very long time, I choose it freely. That is the whole story. At least, it is the whole story so far. Stories do not really end, they just reach places where you can stop and breathe for a while. This is one of those places. I am breathing. If this story reached something in you, if you have ever sat in a family gathering feeling like a ghost in your own life, if you have ever calculated how much you have given and felt the vertigo of the number, if you have ever been told you are too sensitive or too difficult when what you were was simply too honest about needing something real, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me when you knew. Tell me the moment you understood that you were allowed to stop. I read everything, and if you are still in it, still in the middle of figuring it out, still in the part where you are not sure what comes after you finally stop pretending, I want to tell you something. The morning after, the first morning when the phone does not buzz with someone needing something from you, is one of the strangest and most beautiful mornings of your life. It is quiet in a way that might feel wrong at first. It is supposed to feel that way. It means something has changed. Stay with it. It gets clearer every day.